At CES 2026, AMD announced they were enhancing their range of Strix Halo APUs, which means that even though it's a year old, this HP Zbook or Zbook Ultra G1a 14 packs the most punchy APU that AMD has ever made, the Ryzen AI Max Plus Pro 395, which means it can do this in Cyberpunk 2077, running at a resolution of 1920 by 1200 with image quality set to ultra. And you'll note it's on battery power, there's not a charger in sight. Before we look at the details of the laptop, the HP Zbook Ultra G1a, and that's a clunky old name, we're first going to have to get familiar with AMD's Strix Halo APU, or more accurately family of APUs, and once we've done that, it'll become clearer to you why the power supply is rated at 140 watts. It's not particularly large, but it's quite beefy, and that's fairly necessary for this laptop. AMD first announced their Ryzen AI Max and Ryzen AI Max Pro processors at CES 2025, and it's an impressive looking piece of silicon, up to 16 cores and 32 threads, 128 gigabytes of unified memory. The memory is on the package, it's not add-in memory on the laptop. 40 RDNA 3.5 GPU cores and 50 TOPS of AI-ness. In fact, those 40 GPU cores and indeed the 16 CPU cores bear a little bit of inspection. Initially there were 4 members of the family, from the top and going down: 395, 390, 385 and 380. At this year's CES 2026, AMD announced a couple more models of the Ryzen AI Max, the 388 and the 392, and the 380 appears to have fallen off the bottom of this particular chart, but you can see, depending on the SKU you buy, you get 8, 12 or 16 CPU cores, you get 50 NPU tops across the board. The 380 at the bottom of the stack has 8 CPU cores, 16 threads and 16 GPU cores. They call that GPU the 8040S. Then you step up to the 385, which also has 8 CPU cores, but the graphics are now the 8050S with 32 GPU cores. And then we have the 390 with 12 CPU cores and 32 GPU cores. Top of the stack, it's the 395 with 16 CPU cores and 40 GPU cores. You will also have noticed that AMD didn't mention power. When we look at this detailed spec of the Ryzen AI Max 395, you can see the default TDP is 55 watts, but this can be configured between 45 and 120 watts. And that makes more sense of this 140 watt power supply. No matter how this APU is configured, the power supply is up to the job. At CES 2025, we saw a handful of machines using Strix Halo. We saw mini PCs and we also saw laptops. So having seen Strix Halo in the early part of 2025, it kind of went quiet. A handful of reviews popped up, particularly of the Asus ROG Flow 13. The HP, very thin on the ground on the review front. But Intel, bless them, made me think once again about Strix Halo, and in particular about this HP Zbook. And why, you may wonder, was that? It's all to do with Intel's brand new Core Ultra 300 series, aka Panther Lake. When Intel was talking about Panther Lake versus the competition, they were comparing it to Ryzen AI 7 and 9 of the 300 series and soon to be 400 series. And they didn't mention Strix Halo at all. This struck me as slightly peculiar. Now, there's no denying that Strix Halo can be very expensive, but the top of the heap from Panther Lake is also very expensive. We're talking £2,500. So I had to wonder, how was Intel going to compare to the best that AMD had to offer? And it seemed to me that this HP laptop was that very best. And let's see how the APU runs in practice. I'm going to do a quick run of Cinebench R23 on charger, and then I'm going to pull the cord and we'll do it on battery. And just to be crystal clear, in my benchmarking charts I do a 10-minute run of Cinebench, so we can get the temperature up and we can also get past the boost phase. This is just a quick and dirty, let's see what's going on. Initially the CPU power boosts to 70 watts. 8 of the Zen 5 cores boost to 3.2 GHz, while the other 8 go as high as 3.45 GHz. After a time, the power drops back to 60 watts. And the cores now run at 3.1 GHz and 3.0 GHz. Temperature is a mere 45 degrees Celsius. The final score, 26,871. Running on battery, the CPU initially boosts to 49 watts and all the cores are running at 2.8 GHz. After a time, the CPU pulls back to 40 watts and the speed is a mere 2.45 GHz. Temperature is 41 degrees C. The score now is 21,697. And let's take a look at the graphics in FarCry 6 at the full screen resolution of 2880 by 1800. We've got Fidelity FX Super Resolution or FSR set to performance mode. And with the charger connected, we saw the graphics run up to 2.16 GHz. Power draw at the charger was 110 watts. And this benchmark test was running on average at 93 frames per second. Pulling the charger and running on battery, we see the graphics speed drop to around 1.9 GHz. It's quite variable, however. Both HWinfo and GPU-Z were unable to monitor the graphics behavior, so we don't know what the power draw was. And on average, we see 67 frames per second. You'll note that pop-up during the benchmark saying our graphics driver was out of date, but as you can see, this is not the case. Our assessment is that Ubisoft is somewhat confused by AMD Strix Halo. And now let's take a look at the actual laptop, starting with the screen. Resolution is 2880 by 1800 and it's touchscreen. It's an OLED rated at 400 nits. Let's just start something running to give you some eye candy. Let's go with Firestrike. The physical size of this laptop surprises me considering it's such a powerhouse. The laptop itself is 1.57 kilos, but that is plus the charger. The charger is almost exactly 500 grams. So think in terms of 2 to 2.1 kilos for the laptop and charger. You won't necessarily need to take the charger on your travels. The laptop has good battery. The battery in question being an HP XL Long Life 4 cell and it's 74.5 watt hours. Dimensions, it's a 14-inch laptop and it's rated at 18mm of thickness, but it's not tapering to a point to give you an unnatural figure. It is a really small laptop considering it's got a 16-core processor with proper graphics. Let's take a look at the ports and connectors. On the left-hand side, we have a Type-C rated at 10 gigabits per second that can do power delivery and DisplayPort. We also have an HDMI 2.1. There's a headphone microphone combo jack and a Thunderbolt 4, which is Type-C rated at 40 gigabits per second, which can also do DisplayPort. On the right-hand side, we have a USB Type-A rated at 10 gigabits per second, a second Thunderbolt 4, which is also rated at 40 gigabits per second and does DisplayPort, and there's a Kensington lock. The webcam is 5 megapixel, it's perfectly okay. The touchpad is large, works really well. The keyboard, will this cancel the benchmark? Not sure. No, it doesn't. The keyboard is astoundingly average. It was fine to type on. I didn't feel the need to plug in a USB keyboard at any point during my benchmarking. The styling of this laptop is incredibly understated, but then they are marketing it as a mobile workstation. To reiterate, this particular HP Zbook has a Ryzen AI Max Plus Pro 395 APU that packs AMD Radeon 8060S graphics and 128 gigabytes of LPDDR5X rated at 8533. There's a 2 terabyte Gen 4 SSD and MediaTek supplies the Wi-Fi 7. You won't be surprised, there is no sign of an Ethernet port in this very slender laptop. Okay, let's get on to some performance charts. And of course we need some other laptops to compare to the HP. So we have this Asus ZenBook Duo, which is a Meteor Lake laptop with a Core Ultra 9 185H with 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X 7467. Next we have this Asus VivoBook S14, AMD powered. It packs an AMD Ryzen AI 7 350, that's a Kraken Point processor, and has 32 gigabytes of SODIMM memory rated at 5600 megatransfers. Graphics are Radeon 860M. Next we have an Asus ZenBook 14, Intel powered, that's Lunar Lake. and the processor Core Ultra 7 258V. The memory is 32GB of LPDDR5X 8533 and the graphics are Intel Arc 140V. And here we have a second Asus ZenBook Duo, and it packs a Panther Lake Intel Core Ultra X9388H with 32GB of DDR5X rated at 9600 megatransfers. And just in case you're wondering what makes a ZenBook Duo a duo, it's the second screen under the keyboard. Once I've finished reviewing this HP, I'll be moving on to do Panther Lake in this particular laptop. The graphics are Intel Arc B390. And just to make sure you are keeping track there, we've got a total of 5 laptops. 2 AMD, 3 Intel, all of them packing integrated graphics with 32GB of fast DDR5 memory. Okay, now we can get on with those charts. We'll take the first chart, which is GeekBench 6 multi-core slowly, and after that we can speed up. The two blue bars both refer to the HP Zbook Ultra G1a, the one in second place on charger, the other on battery power. So top of the chart we have the ZenBook Duo with Intel Panther Lake, that's running on charger, and it scores about 17,500 points. A fraction below that we have the HP Zbook also on charger, 17,300, effectively a tie. Then we drop down to those two laptops running on battery, scoring around 15,000. So in this test, the Intel just beats the HP. Third from the bottom, we have the Asus VivoBook with the AMD Ryzen AI7. That's a slightly unusual processor in that it's 8 cores, but 4 of them are Zen 5 and 4 of them are Zen 5C. So 8 cores, 16 threads, but 2 types of cores, effectively P cores and E cores. Second from the bottom, we have the second ZenBook Duo with the Intel Core Ultra 9185H. That's a Meteor Lake with 6 P cores, 8 E cores and 2 LP cores, 3 types of cores and 22 threads in total. Bottom of the chart we have the Asus ZenBook with the Intel Core Ultra 7 258V. That's an 8-core, 8-thread processor, but that's 4 P cores and 4 LP cores, no E cores. And to put this chart in context, we're looking at those 5 laptops, 5 bars, because we're looking at them all running on charger, not on battery, and you can see how they sit compared to a whole bunch of different desktop processors we've reviewed over the past few months. The two best laptops, the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake and the HP Zbook with AMD Strix Halo, running respectively on 40 watts and 60 watts, are basically in a tie with a Core i5-14600K running on 180 watts, or a Core Ultra 5 245K Arrow Lake running on 150 watts. Perfectly reasonable performance from those laptops using much less power. And we move on to GeekBench 6 single core. Top of the chart, it's the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake running on charger, followed by the VivoBook with Ryzen AI 7350 also on charger. Then we have Strix Halo on charger, Lunar Lake on charger, Panther Lake on battery, Meteor Lake on charger, and bottom of the pile, and to my great surprise, we have the HP Zbook running on battery. And this suggests that Strix Halo relies on having 16 cores and 32 threads, so when you cut it back to a single core, it really suffers. Next we have Cinebench 2026 multi-core. Top of the chart, it's the HP Zbook on charger, followed by the HP Zbook on battery. A step behind we have the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake on battery, but basically in a tie with that ZenBook Duo on charger. Very strange this. We monitored the ZenBook Duo on battery running at 28 watts for the processor, while it drew 40 watts connected to the charger, so why the one score is slightly lower than the other, we have no explanation. But in this test it is clear the HP with Strix Halo beats the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake quite comfortably. In this test we're taking the Cinebench 2026 score and dividing by the power draw for the CPU in watts. Now Panther Lake jumps to the top of the chart, however the HP Zbook with Strix Halo is not far behind. Cinebench 2026 single core. Top of the chart, it's the Vivobook with Ryzen AI 7 350 on charger, and that's followed by the HP Zbook also on charger. You can see the power draw for the HP is slightly higher than the Vivobook, but in the broad scheme of things there's not much to separate the two. After that we have the aged Meteor Lake, and then we have Panther Lake. That's a surprise, particularly as the two CPUs are basically drawing the same amount of power, and it's worth noting that third from the bottom we have the second figure for HP Zbook, this time on battery, where the performance isn't great, however the power draw is very low. Cinebench 2024 multi-core, top of the chart by a long way. It's the HP Zbook running on charger, and in second place it's the HP Zbook on battery. After that we have the Asus ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake on battery, slightly ahead of the ZenBook Duo running on charger. The story here quite clearly is that the HP does well on battery and it does better on charger, whereas the Asus ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake doesn't really seem to mind whether it's on battery or on charger. Cinebench 2024 single core. At the top we have Intel Panther Lake, followed by Intel Lunar Lake. Then we have the Ryzen AI 7 350, and slap in the middle of the chart we see the first figure for the HP Zbook with Strix Halo, and way down the bottom of the chart it's the second figure for the HP Zbook, the Strix Halo running on battery. Cinebench R23 multi-core. The top two figures are owned by the HP Zbook with Strix Halo, and it's a long way back to Intel Panther Lake. Again, you can see there's quite a big difference between the HP Zbook on charger and on battery, whereas the ZenBook Duo of Panther Lake doesn't really seem to mind whether it's on mains or on battery. Cinebench R23 single core. This one's won by Panther Lake running on the charger, but in second place we have the Zbook with Strix Halo, also on charger. In 7-zip version 25, it's a clear win for the HP Zbook with the Strix Halo, and once again we see with the ZenBook Duo with Intel Panther Lake, it doesn't matter whether you're running on charger or on battery. ADA 64 memory bandwidth. It's a massive victory for the HP Zbook and Strix Halo with all those memory channels. In second place, a long way behind, it's the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake. 3D Mark Firestrike. This benchmark's interesting because it shows the breakdown in each APU between the CPU part and the GPU. The red line is the CPU, the green line the graphics, and then the combined score leans heavily on the graphics and is rather more than an average. And we see at the top of the chart it's the HP Zbook with Strix Halo. Very good processor, but also very good graphics. In second place it's the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake. Very good processor with fairly good graphics. And if you look down at the bottom of the chart where you see the Asus Vivobook with the Ryzen AI 7 350, surprisingly good processor, fairly poor graphics, overall score low. And let's look at some games, starting with Assassin's Creed Mirage. For the first chart we're running at 1280 by 800 and we have TAA or temporal anti-aliasing enabled. Top of the chart it's the HP Zbook, that's running on the charger, 89 FPS on average and entirely playable. In second place it's the Zbook, now running on battery, 67 FPS with a 1% low of 33, just about playable. And in third and fourth places we have the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake, the one figure on battery, the other on charger, essentially tied, and again that is playable. The bottom three laptops aren't really playable. We step up the resolution to 1920 by 1200, still on TAA, and the HP Zbook on charger again is playable. It's questionable whether the second figure on battery is playable, 55 on average, 21 FPS, 1% low, not that great. At this higher resolution the ZenBook Duo with Panther Lake has dropped to 45 and 46 FPS, not really playable. Sticking with the 1920 by 1200 resolution, we now enable frame generation, that's FSR3 for AMD or XeSS for Intel, and just look at the difference. The Zbook on charger is now running at 93 FPS on average, which is what it was doing at 1280 by 800 without frame gen, and on battery it's running at 69 FPS but only 34 FPS, 1% low. The Panther Lake ZenBook Duo is running at 64 or 63 FPS depending on whether it's on charger or battery. That's also pretty good. We move up to the maximum resolution of 2880 by 1800 on TAA, and the Zbook is struggling on charger, 46 FPS on average, on battery 36 FPS. But when we enable frame gen, look at the figures. The Zbook on charger is doing 79 FPS on average, 58 FPS on charger, and the Panther Lake Zenbook Duo is doing okay as well, 47 FPS on average, while the bottom three laptops haven't got a chance. Our second game is Far Cry 6. Once again we start at 1280 by 800 and we have the Fidelity FX setting off. Top of the chart we can see the HP Zbook on charger is running at 104 FPS, which is deeply impressive. Below that we have the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake running at 87 FPS on battery and 83 FPS on charger, which is both impressive and slightly peculiar. And then we have the Zbook on battery running at 72 FPS. You can see the other laptops are also just about playable. Enabling FSR performance mode at 1280 by 800 boosts the frame rate significantly. We've now got the Zenbook Duo running at 113 FPS on average, both on battery and on charger, and so too the HP Zbook is running at 113 FPS on charger. On battery it still delivers a credible 88 FPS, and you can see the other laptops are also doing well. Increasing the resolution to 1920 by 1200 with FSR, the figures get slightly peculiar. The HP Zbook on charger is now running at 105 FPS. The Zenbook Duo on battery is running at 103 FPS, but when you plug in the charger the frame rate actually drops to 89 FPS. By contrast, the HP Zbook on battery is running at 74 FPS. I put in a question to Asus about this slight peculiarity where I'm getting figures for the charger which are worse than the battery figures, but I didn't hear back. When we look to the bottom of the chart we can see the junior laptops are also performing quite competently at 1920 by 1200 with FSR. And finally in Far Cry 6 we increase the resolution to 2800 by 1800 with FSR enabled, and while we see the frame rates drop for the HP Zbook and the Asus Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake, they are very respectable. Our third game is Cyberpunk 2077. Once again we start at 1280 by 800 and we have Fidelity FX or XESS turned off, in other words native resolution. The HP Zbook Ultra absolutely tops this chart without any difficulty. In second place, a distance behind, we have the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake, and once again it doesn't matter whether the Panther Lake runs on charger or on battery, whereas the differential with the HP Zbook between charger and battery is substantial. We increase the resolution to 1920 by 1200 and it's a similar story. HP Zbook clear away at the top of the chart, and in second place on battery it beats the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake by a comfortable margin. The other three laptops are way down the bottom of the chart. Sticking with 1920 by 1200 we enable Fidelity FX or XESS and we see a healthy increase in frame rates. HP Zbook continues to dominate the chart, but once again we see peculiar behaviour from Zenbook Duo. Panther Lake is running better on battery than it is on charger. The other three laptops are barely playable. Our third chart at 1920 by 1200 has frame gen enabled. Just look at the HP Zbook. On charger it's running at 176 FPS and 117 on battery. The Zenbook Duo also does well, but on battery the 1% lows are very good at 62 FPS, while on charger, bizarrely, they are 32 FPS. Simply do not understand what is going on here. Cyberpunk 2077 at 2880 by 1800, and we have Fidelity FX or XESS turned off. The frame rates here are fairly terrible, and even the mighty Zbook Ultra on charger can only manage 30 FPS on average and 22 at 1% lows. Enabling Fidelity FX and XESS really helps. The Zbook Ultra is now running at 58 FPS on charger, 41 FPS on battery. Meanwhile the Zenbook Duo is running at 32 FPS and 24 1% lows, both with charger and on battery. Enabling frame gen at 2880 by 1800 is impressive. The Zbook Ultra is now running at 96 FPS on average, 74% 1% lows, and it manages 66 FPS on average on battery. The Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake is running around 50 FPS on average, however the 1% lows are indeed low. The other three laptops are also runs. And we finish up with the PCMark 10 battery test. As you can see, we have some legacy data here. After all, battery tests are battery tests. And clear away at the top of the chart, it's Panther Lake. 1,428 minutes is just under 24 hours, which would be 1,440 minutes. A truly monumental figure. In the middle of the chart, we have the HP Zbook Ultra. 597 minutes is just under 10 hours, which is pretty bloomin' impressive from a portable workstation.
Built for what lies beyond. Raw power, engineered for dominance. Every system pushed beyond limits. Whether you need a custom build or one ready for launch tomorrow, Cyberpower PC powers your next conquest. So don't wait. Conquer the cosmos.
This review's gone on rather longer than I expected, so you may wonder, what do I think about this HP Zbook Ultra G1a, apart from the fact I don't much like the model name. I'm impressed, truly impressed. The performance from the APU, the Strix Halo APU inside this laptop is truly impressive. On the other hand, at £3,204, it really should be impressive. And I have to say, you don't get anything in the package apart from the charger and the laptop. You don't get a protective sleeve, no bells and whistles, nothing. So this is what you get for just over £3,000. Pros and cons. The pros, the good points. Epic CPU and GPU performance from AMD AI Max Plus Pro 395. I need to be absolutely crystal clear. I reviewed a version of Strix Halo. This is the top SKU. It's very good. I cannot speak to other versions of Strix Halo and indeed to other versions of the HP Zbook, but this is good. Secondly, impressive battery life for a mobile workstation. On the other hand, as I've also demonstrated, depending on the software that you're running, you may well want to use the charger. There are many instances where you get a useful uplift in performance on charger rather than on battery, but you can use this laptop for a genuine day's work on battery. Third, the form factor. It's highly compact and highly portable. Very impressive. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing, this laptop, which is actually ironic because it has some software there which is HP Wolf Security. We'll come to that in just a moment. And fourth, the memory bandwidth. Because of the quad channel memory controller, it has huge memory bandwidth and very snappy response as a result. Cons, negative points, very expensive. Secondly, the monitoring utilities I use, such as HW-Info and GPU-Z, continue to be confused by AMD APUs. That's not a go at HP. It's not really. It might be a go at AMD, I'm not certain. But it is a fact that certain software has problems with certain hardware. It's also true at the minute of Panther Lake, but of course that's brand new. This is over a year old. I would expect the graphics to be reported by GPU-Z and HW-Info without any difficulty, and they're just not. And thirdly, as I've already alluded to, HP software. Linus did a video very recently. He mentioned this software.
Let's just see how much crap they've preloaded on it. Oh, good lord, the taskbar. With HP's addition of their AI companion, 3 of the 8 items down here are AI tools. That's 3 too many. And even worse, HP's AI companion app will pop up periodically telling me how much it respects my privacy. HP, you can right off with that.
Here we have my dashboard, here we have my computer. Those two look to be mirror images. And then here we have some software to do the webcam, which, as it happens during my review process, actually crashed on one occasion. So we have multiple pieces of software. HP is a very large, very competent company. Why they haven't got one glorious unified whole, I don't quite understand. So I'm putting that down as a bit of a negative. Overall, I'm going to award this HP Zbook 8 out of 10, and it's a worth buying. Do please head over to kitguru.net to read our reviews, and we're also on TikTok.